Welcome to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Eliza Hawthorne. Settle in with a cup of tea, darling, as we embark on a chilling journey through the fog-shrouded lanes of 1920s England. Tonight's tale is a brand new Hercule Poirot mystery in the timeless style of Agatha Christie, Death of the Colonel in Crimson Court. Picture a grand country estate, secrets locked behind oak doors, and a crime that seems utterly impossible. This is a locked room whodunit that'll keep you guessing for over 90 minutes, perfect for your evening unwind. Chapter 1. Arrival at Crimson Court. The year was 1925, and autumn had draped the Kent countryside in a tapestry of amber and crimson. Crimson Court, a grand Elizabethan manor, stood resolute amid sprawling lawns, its stone facade weathered by centuries yet defiant against time. Ivy clung to its walls like whispered secrets, and its tall, mullioned windows glinted under a weak October sun. The estate, nestled 30 miles from London's clamor, was a world unto itself, a place where history and ambition collided, where every creak of oak floorboards hinted at stories untold. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mind sharp as a rapier, stepped from a gleaming Daimler onto the gravel drive. His patent leather shoes crunched softly, and his meticulously waxed mustache quivered as he inhaled the crisp air. Beside him, Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, adjusted his tweed cap and surveyed the manor with a soldier's eye. "Quite the pile, eh, Poirot?" Hastings said, his breath visible in the chill. "Colonel Harrington's invitation promised a weekend of fine company and finer brandy. No mysteries here, I wager." Poirot's green eyes sparkled with that peculiar intensity that saw beyond pleasantries. "Mon ami," he said, his Belgian accent clipping each syllable. "Where there are people, there are secrets. And where there are secrets, there is work for the little gray cells." Hastings chuckled, accustomed to Poirot's penchant for finding puzzles in the mundane. "You're here for a house party, not a crime scene. Relax, old chap." The invitation had come through a mutual acquaintance in London's social circles, a retired general who praised Colonel Sir Reginald Harrington as a man of iron will and impeccable hospitality. The colonel, a decorated veteran of 68, had commanded regiments in India and survived the Somme mud and blood. Now retired, he presided over Crimson Court with the same authority, his life a collection of military relics and rigid routines. His letter, penned in a bold hand, had promised a weekend of intellectual discourse, a chance for Poirot to mingle with England's gentry. Yet as the manor loomed before them, Poirot sensed a discord beneath its polished veneer. Jenkins, the butler, greeted them at the heavy oak doors. A tall, gaunt man in his 50s, his face was a mask of professionalism, but his gray eyes held a glint of watchfulness like a hawk perched above a field. "Good evening, Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," he intoned, his voice as crisp as his starched collar. "The colonel awaits you in the drawing room. May I take your coats?" His movements were precise, betraying years of service, yet there was a stiffness in his posture as if he carried more than trays. The grand hall unfolded before them, a cavern of opulence. A chandelier, its crystals catching the firelight, hung like a frozen waterfall. Portraits of Harrington ancestors lined the walls, their painted eyes tracking the newcomers with silent judgment. A massive staircase spiraled upward, its banister polished to a mirror sheen, and the air carried the faint scent of beeswax and old wood. Hastings whistled softly. "Fit for a king, this place." In the drawing room, a fire roared in a marble hearth, casting shadows that danced across velvet settees and mahogany tables. Colonel Sir Reginald Harrington stood at the center, a bear of a man with a ruddy complexion and a bristling white mustache, his dinner jacket strained slightly at the shoulders, a testament to years of military discipline rather than indulgence. Pipe in hand, he greeted them with a booming laugh. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, welcome to Crimson Court. I trust the journey wasn't too taxing." His voice carried the authority of a parade ground, yet his eyes, sharp and blue, assessed them keenly. "Most pleasant, Colonel," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "Your home, it is magnifique, a symphony of order and tradition." The Colonel's laugh echoed again, but it held a note of strain, as if mirth was a duty rather than a joy. Seated beside him was Lady Beatrice Harrington, his wife of 30 years. In her early 50s, she was elegance personified. Her silver blonde hair swept into a chignon, a string of pearls glowing at her throat. Her smile was warm, yet it faltered at the edges, and her delicate hands fidgeted with a lace handkerchief. "Monsieur Poirot, your reputation precedes you," she said, her voice soft but cultured. "We're honored to have such a mind among us." Her eyes darted briefly to her husband, a fleeting shadow crossing her face. Their son, Reginald Harrington Jr., lounged against a bookcase, a glass of whiskey in hand. In his late 20s, he was tall and handsome, with the golden hair and easy charm of a matinee idol. Yet his evening clothes were slightly rumpled, and a faint flush suggested one drink too many. "Heard you're the cat's whiskers at solving riddles, Poirot," he said with a lopsided grin. "Hope you brought your magnifying glass. Father's collection of muskets might need dusting." His tone was playful, but there was a brittleness to it, as if he were performing for an unseen audience. Victoria Harrington, the Colonel's daughter, sat by the fire, her bobbed chestnut hair catching the light. At 25, she was a vision of modern vitality, her silk dress shimmering as she moved. Her laughter rang like a bell as she teased her fiancé, Charles Wentworth, a lean, sharp-featured lawyer in his 30s. Charles, the Colonel's nephew by marriage, had the polished air of a man climbing London's legal ladder. "Don't mind Reggie, Monsieur Poirot," Victoria said, her eyes sparkling. "He's all bark. We're thrilled you're here." Charles nodded, his smile tight, his fingers tapping a rhythm on his knee. Hovering at the room's edge was Miss Eleanor Blackwood, Victoria's companion. Plain and unassuming, with mousy brown hair pinned tightly and spectacles perched on her nose, she seemed to blend into the wallpaper. Yet her hands twisted nervously in her lap, and her quiet good evening carried a tremor. Hastings whispered to Poirot, "Bit of a wallflower, that one." The Colonel clapped his hands. "Enough chatter. Dinner's at 8 sharp. Poirot, I expect you'll find our company stimulating, if not as thrilling as your cases." His tone was jovial, but his gaze lingered on his family, a commander sizing up his troops. Dinner was a spectacle in the dining hall, where a long mahogany table gleamed under candlelight. Silver salvers bore roast pheasant, buttery potatoes, and a trifle rich with brandy. The conversation flowed as freely as the claret. Tales of the Colonel's campaigns in the Punjab, Victoria's plans for a London season, Reginald Jr.'s latest triumph at the racetrack, or was it a loss? Charles spoke of legal reforms, his voice precise but tinged with ambition. Lady Beatrice presided with grace, though her hand trembled as she passed the salt cellar. Eleanor ate in silence, her eyes darting between speakers. Poirot, seated beside the Colonel, observed it all. The flicker of Victoria's glance toward Charles, the way Reginald's knuckles whitened around his glass, the butler Jenkins's silent efficiency as he poured wine without spilling a drop. "A fine household, Colonel," Poirot remarked. "Yet every family it has its undercurrents, none?" The Colonel's laugh was curt. "Nonsense. We're as solid as this table." Yet as the meal ended and the guests retired, Poirot murmured to Hastings in their guest room, a cozy chamber with heavy drapes and a 4-poster bed. "The harmony, Hastings, it is a facade. The colonel rules, but not all obey. The little gray cells, they sense a storm brewing. Hastings yawned, tugging at his tie. You see conspiracies in the soup, Poirot. It's just a family with quirks. Chapter 2. The Impossible Crime. The grandfather clock in the great hall of Crimson Court tolled 7, its chimes rolling through the manor like a mournful dirge. Dawn had barely breached the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of pale gold. But the estate stirred with the quiet rhythm of morning. Maids shuffled through the servants' corridors, their aprons rustling as they lit fires. The scent of frying bacon and fresh-baked scones drifted from the kitchens, promising a hearty breakfast. Yet in the east wing, where the colonel's private quarters lay, an unnatural stillness hung heavy, like fog that refused to lift. Lady Beatrice Harrington, ever punctual, rose early as was her custom. Her silk dressing gown whispered against the polished floorboards as she made her way to her husband's bedroom door. The colonel, a creature of military precision, took his heart tonic at precisely 7:15 each morning, a ritual she oversaw since his doctor's orders a year prior. She knocked softly, her knuckles barely grazing the oak. "Reginald, your tonic, dear." No reply. She frowned, her brow creasing beneath her neatly pinned hair. "Reginald?" she called again, sharper now, her voice tinged with unease. Silence answered, cold and absolute. Her heart quickened. She knocked once more, then tried the handle. Locked, as always. The colonel was fastidious about his privacy, bolting his door each night against imagined intruders. Lady Beatrice's breath caught, and she hurried down the corridor, her slippers slapping against the wood. She found Jenkins, the butler, polishing silver in the pantry, his gaunt frame bent over a tray of candlesticks. "Jenkins!" she gasped. "The colonel? He doesn't answer. Fetch the master key, quickly." Jenkins's flint-gray eyes flickered, but he nodded without a word, retrieving the key from a locked drawer. Together they returned to the east wing, the air growing heavier with each step. The key turned with a reluctant groan, and the door swung inward, revealing a scene that froze Lady Beatrice's blood. Colonel Sir Reginald Harrington lay sprawled across his four-poster bed, his once commanding frame grotesquely still. His face was a ghastly purple, eyes bulging in a final silent scream. Foam flecked his lips and his hands clutched at the bedclothes as if wrestling with death itself. A glass of water, half empty, stood on the bedside table, its surface undisturbed. Beside it, his heart tonic bottle, tightly stoppered. On the dresser, his prized Webley revolver gleamed untouched, its barrel cold. The room was a fortress. The heavy door locked from within, the key still in the lock. The tall windows bolted shut, their iron latches unyielding, frost clinging to the panes. The fireplace dark, its grate untouched by recent flame. No footprints marred the polished floor, no scratches scarred the lock. An impossible crime. Lady Beatrice's scream shattered the silence, echoing through the manor. Servants rushed from below stairs, their faces pale. Victoria Harrington, the colonel's daughter, appeared first, her silk robe hastily tied, her chestnut hair tumbling from its pins. "Papa!" she cried, rushing forward only to collapse into the arms of Charles Wentworth, her fiancé, who had followed close behind. Charles, his sharp lawyer's face taut, steadied her, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "Good God," he muttered, his voice low. "What's happened here?" Reginald Harrington Jr. stumbled in next, his evening clothes from the night before rumpled, a faint whiff of whiskey clinging to him. "Father?" he croaked, his handsome face draining of color. "No, it can't be." He swayed, gripping the doorframe. Miss Eleanor Blackwood, Victoria's companion, hovered at the threshold, her spectacles glinting as she wrung her hands, her plain features pinched with fear. "Oh, heavens," she whispered, barely audible. Jenkins stood rigid, his butler's composure a thin veneer. "I'll fetch the doctor, my lady," he said, but his voice trembled slightly as he retreated. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings, roused by the commotion, arrived moments later, Poirot's small frame impeccable even in haste, his green eyes alight with focus. "Mon Dieu!" he exclaimed, halting at the bedside. "Do not touch a thing, I beg of you. Hastings, summoned the local constabulary at once, but first I, Hercule Poirot, must examine this tragedy." Hastings, ever practical, dashed to the telephone in the hall, while Poirot circled the room like a hawk. The colonel's body told a grim tale, the purpled face, the foam, the acrid scent lingering in the air, poison almost certainly. Digitalis, Poirot suspected from the colonel's heart tonic, known to cause such symptoms in overdose. But how? The glass bore only the colonel's fingerprints, confirmed by Poirot's careful inspection with a handkerchief. The tonic bottle, when opened, smelled clean, its contents seemingly untouched. The room's defenses were impenetrable. No hidden panels in the walls, no soot in the chimney to suggest a secret entry, no marks on the window frames. The key, still in the lock, mocked any theory of external tampering. Inspector Grange, a ruddy-faced policeman from the nearby village of Ashford, arrived within the hour, his boots thudding on the gravel drive. He surveyed the scene with a furrowed brow, his notebook flapping in his meaty hand. "Looks like suicide, Monsieur Poirot," he declared, scratching his chin. "Locked room, key inside, no sign of a struggle. The colonel was ailing. Heart trouble, wasn't it? Perhaps he took too much tonic." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sure sign of disdain. "None, Inspector. Suicide is too simple, too tidy. The man who locks his door against the world does not invite death so carelessly. This is murder, most ingenious, most impossible." Grange blinked, unconvinced, but deferred to the detective's reputation. "Have it your way, sir. But how'd anyone get in?" The household gathered in the drawing room, their faces a gallery of grief and suspicion. Lady Beatrice, now composed but pale, clutched her pearls. "He changed his will last month," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Everything to charities, war widows, orphanages. He said the family had enough." Her eyes flickered to her son. Reginald Jr., pacing by the fire, snapped, "He cut me off after Monte Carlo, Mother. Called me a wastrel, but murder, I was in my room by midnight." His alibi, confirmed by a sleepy footman, held, for now. Victoria, nestled against Charles, sobbed. "Papa forbade our marriage," she confessed. "He said Charles wasn't good enough, that I'd disgrace the family, but I was knitting in my room. Eleanor saw me." Eleanor nodded, her voice small. "Yes, miss. I was reading nearby." Charles adjusted his tie, his lawyer's calm strained. "Uncle owed me money, investments in his armaments business. We argued, yes, but I dined at the village pub till late. Ask the barman." His receipt, produced from his pocket, bore a time stamp, 11:30 p.m. Eleanor, barely noticed, murmured, "The colonel dismissed my brother years ago, a butler, falsely accused of theft. I bore no grudge." Her hands twisted her apron, betraying her words. Jenkins, serving tea with mechanical precision, added nothing. "I locked the house at midnight, sir," he told Poirot. "The colonel took his tonic at 10:30 as I served it. The bottle was untouched thereafter." Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind his back. The poison, it was in the glass, yet how? No fingerprints but his. The tonic bottle, it is clean. The room, a vault. And yet murder was done. Hastings, returning, ventured, "Could it be ice? Poisoned ice melting into the water?" Poirot shook his head. "Non, mon ami. The glass has no excess water. The method, it is elsewhere, hidden in plain sight." As the body was covered and carried away, whispers of motive swirled like the morning mist. Lady Beatrice's trembling hands, Reginald's debts, Victoria's defiance, Charles's ambition, Eleanor's quiet resentment, Jenkins's silent watchfulness, each a thread in a tangled web. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The impossible crime, it is a challenge to the little gray cells, but order will prevail. Oh, my dears, what a puzzle we have. A locked room, a dead colonel, and a house full of secrets. Who do you suspect, Reginald's temper or perhaps Jenkins's silence? Drop your guesses in the comments and let's see if you're ahead of Poirot. Like and subscribe for the next chapter where the investigation deepens. Until then, keep your wits sharp and your candles lit. Chapter 3. The investigation begins. The morning sun struggled through the heavy clouds over Crimson Court, casting a pallid light across the manor's stone facade. Inside, the atmosphere was taut as a bowstring, the household reeling from the colonel's impossible murder. The east wing where the crime occurred was cordoned off by Inspector Grange's men, their heavy boots leaving smudges on the polished floors. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the chaos, had claimed the library as his base, a vast room lined with leather-bound tomes, its green-shaded lamps casting pools of light on the oak table. The air smelled of old paper and wax, a fitting stage for a detective whose mind thrived on order. Poirot stood by a window, his small frame silhouetted against the frost-etched glass, his hands clasped behind his back. "Hastings," he said, his Belgian accent sharp, "this crime, it is a puzzle of exquisite design. A locked room, a poison with no trace, a family with secrets. Oh, it delights the little gray cells." Captain Hastings, nursing a cup of tea, sighed. "You're enjoying this too much, Poirot. The poor colonel's barely cold, and you're pacing like a schoolboy with a riddle." "Non, mon ami," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting. "It is not enjoyment, it is necessity. The truth hides behind lies, and we must peel them away, layer by layer." He turned to the assembled household, summoned to the library for questioning. Lady Beatrice sat erect on a velvet chair, her face pale but composed, her pearls gleaming like tiny moons. Reginald Harrington Jr. slouched against a bookcase, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. Victoria, her beauty marred by tear-streaked cheeks, clung to Charles Wentworth's arm. His lawyer's poise strained but intact. Miss Eleanor Blackwood perched on the edge of a stool, her spectacles reflecting the firelight, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. Jenkins, the butler, stood by the door, his gaunt face unreadable. Inspector Grange, notebook in hand, cleared his throat. "Right, Monsieur Poirot, I've got statements from the staff. Maids, footmen, cook. All claim they were abed by 11. The family's alibis are shaky, but no one's confessing. My money's still on suicide, digitalis overdose, self-administered." Poirot's mustache quivered with disdain. "Inspector, you see the surface, not the depths. The colonel, a man of iron will, does not end his life in a locked room with no note, no chaos. Murder, it is certain. Now let us begin. First, Lady Beatrice." She rose, her silk dress rustling, and faced Poirot with the dignity of a duchess. "I retired at 11, monsieur," she said, her voice steady but soft. "Reginald and I. We argued last night, yes, about our son's debts. He was furious, called Reginald a disgrace, but I swear I went to my room and locked my door. Well, not locked, unlatched as always." Her eyes flicked to a small pearl brooch on the table, a nervous tell Poirot noted. "And the colonel's tonic?" he asked. "You oversaw it daily." She nodded. "Jenkins prepared it at 10:30. I saw Reginald take it before bed. Nothing amiss." Reginald Jr. was next, his charm replaced by a sullen edge. "I was in the billiard room till midnight knocking balls about. Footman saw me, ask him, father cut me off after I lost a packet at Monte Carlo, but murder, that's rot." Poirot's gaze lingered on his cufflinks, monogrammed silver, one missing. "Monsieur, your cufflink, where's its twin?" Reginald flushed. Lost it weeks ago, probably in London. The footman summoned confirmed seeing him in the billiard room, but his eyes darted away, uncertain. Victoria, her voice trembling, spoke through tears. Papa was so cruel about Charles, said he'd disown me if I married him. I was in my room knitting after dinner. Eleanor can vouch. Eleanor, barely audible, nodded. Yes, miss, I was reading in the next room till 1. A medical book, research, you see. Poirot's brow arched. Research, mademoiselle. Curious. He noted a torn page in her novel, tucked under her arm, its edge ragged. Charles Wentworth adjusted his spectacles, his tone clipped. I dined at the Fox and Hound in Ashford till 11:30. The barman and 2 locals saw me. Uncle owed me 2,000, business investments gone sour. We argued, but I'd never... He produced a receipt, ink crisp, time-stamped. Poirot pocketed it without comment. Jenkins last stood like a statue. I served the Colonel's tonic at 10:30, as always, sir. Locked the house at midnight. Checked the east wing myself. No one about. Poirot leaned forward. The tonic bottle, Jenkins. It was untouched after? Jenkins nodded. Sealed tight, sir. I'd stake my life on it. Poirot dismissed them, then turned to the evidence. The tonic bottle, retrieved from the Colonel's room, was half full, its contents clear of poison when tested by Grange's chemist. The glass, wiped clean by Poirot's handkerchief, bore only the Colonel's prints. The room itself remained a vault, door locked, key inside, windows bolted, no scratches, fireplace cold, no hidden passages. Yet a clue emerged. A single crimson thread, fine as spider silk, caught on the carpet near the bed. It matched the hue of Lady Beatrice's dressing gown hung in her wardrobe. A red herring, perhaps, Poirot murmured, or a thread to the truth. Hastings, pacing, ventured a theory. What about the ice, Poirot? Poison in an ice cube melting into the water? Poirot shook his head. Non, Hastings. The glass holds no excess water, precisely half, as drunk. The poison had entered another way. He examined the Webley revolver on the dresser, its barrel polished, no recent use. Why clean a gun you do not fire? He mused aloud. By noon, Grange was restless. We've searched the room top to bottom, Poirot. No secret doors, no poison vials. Suicide's the only thing that fits. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Patience, Inspector. The method is clever, but not invisible. We must look where no one looks. Lunch was a somber affair in the dining hall, the silver clinking like accusations. Lady Beatrice dropped her spoon, the sound sharp in the silence. Victoria whispered to Charles, her hand gripping his. Reginald drained a glass of claret, his eyes avoiding his mother's. Eleanor pushed food around her plate, her spectacles fogging slightly. Jenkins served with mechanical grace, but his hands trembled as he poured coffee. Poirot, seated at the table's end, observed each gesture. The family, Hastings, he whispered. They are like actors in a play, each performing innocence. But one mask will slip. Hastings frowned. You're certain it's one of them? What about an outsider? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The locked room, mon ami? It points to those within these walls. As the meal ended, Poirot requested a tour of the estate's lesser rooms, attics, cellars, servants' quarters. In the butler's pantry, he found the medicine chest, its digitalis vial intact but curiously full. Replaced? Hastings asked. Jenkins nearby stiffened. No, sir. That's the stock bottle, never touched. Poirot's gaze lingered on a small icebox in the corner, its door slightly ajar. Interesting, he said, but did not elaborate. Outside, the wind whipped through the gardens, rattling the bare branches. A footman, nervous, approached Poirot. Sir, I saw a shadow last night near the east wing around 11, so tall, cloaked, couldn't say who. Poirot nodded. Merci, young man, every shadow has a source. Back in the library, Poirot spread a floor plan of the East Wing, sketching the locked room's dimensions. "The key," he said, "is not in what we see, but in what we do not. The thread, the shadow, the clean revolver, they speak if we listen." Hastings groaned. "You're talking in riddles again, Poirot." But Poirot only smiled, his mind already weaving the threads of Crimson Court's dark tapestry. "Oh, my friends, the plot thickens. A crimson thread, a mysterious shadow, what do they mean? Is Lady Beatrice hiding something, or is Reginald's lost cufflink the key? Drop your guesses in the comments. Who's your prime suspect? Subscribe and join us for Chapter 4, where the clues multiply. Stay cozy and keep your eyes sharp for the truth. Chapter 4. Clues Emerge. The afternoon sun hung low over Crimson Court, its rays barely piercing the heavy clouds that cloaked the Kent countryside. Inside the manor, the air was thick with unease, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of purpose, moved through the estate with the precision of a metronome, his green eyes catching details others missed. The library remained his command post, its shelves of dusty tomes a silent audience to his deductions. Captain Hastings trailed behind, his notebook filled with scribbled theories, most of which Poirot dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his Belgian accent crisp, "you see clues, but not their meaning. We must separate the wheat from the chaff." The household, still reeling from the colonel's death, moved like ghosts through the corridors. Inspector Grange, with his earnest but plodding manner, had stationed a constable at the East Wing door, ensuring the crime scene remained untouched. Yet Poirot insisted on a deeper search, beyond the locked room's confines. "The truth," he told Hastings, "hides not only in the room but in the lives that surround it." Poirot began with the colonel's study, a masculine sanctum of dark wood and leather. The desk, a hulking mahogany affair, was strewn with ledgers and letters, each a window into the colonel's world. One ledger, its pages yellowed, detailed Reginald Jr.'s debts. 5,000 lost to bookmakers and casinos, a sum that had drawn the colonel's wrath. "Disinherited," Poirot murmured, noting a scrawled note in the margin. "No more for R.J." Another document revealed Charles Wentworth's claim, a 2,000 investment in the colonel's armaments business, unpaid, with a curt letter refusing repayment. "Motive," Hastings said, peering over Poirot's shoulder. "Perhaps," Poirot replied, "but motive alone does not unlock a room." A more intriguing find lay hidden in a locked drawer, pried open with a paper knife. A letter dated 2 years prior from a man named Thomas Blackwood, Eleanor's brother, the dismissed butler. "Sir, I beg you reconsider my dismissal. The theft was not my doing. My family suffers." The colonel's reply, pinned beneath, was cold. No evidence, no return. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Mademoiselle Eleanor? She carries a silent grudge, perhaps?" Hastings frowned. "She's a mouse, Poirot, hardly the murdering type." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The quiet ones, mon ami, they surprise most." Next, Poirot turned to Victoria's bedroom, a feminine contrast to the study's severity. Silk curtains framed the windows, and a vanity table held powders and perfumes. Among them, a lace handkerchief caught his eye, its edge stained with a faint, bitter-smelling residue. "Perfume," she said, Poirot recalled from an earlier conversation. He sniffed it carefully, his nose wrinkling. "Not perfume, something chemical. Digitalis, perhaps." He bagged it for Grange's chemist, though he suspected a red herring. Victoria's knitting basket nearby held skeins of wool, but no crimson thread to match the one from the crime scene. "Curious," Poirot muttered. "The thread points to Lady Beatrice, yet here it is absent." In the butler's pantry, Poirot examined the medicine chest again. The digitalis vial, full and sealed, seemed untouched, as Jenkins had claimed. But a small discrepancy caught Poirot's eye. The label was slightly misaligned, as if recently replaced. A switch, Hastings suggested. Jenkins summoned swore it was the original. "I check it daily, sir. No tampering." Poirot's gaze lingered on the icebox nearby, its door now firmly shut. He opened it, revealing neat rows of ice cubes, their surfaces unremarkable. "Nothing," Hastings said. Poirot only nodded, his mind elsewhere. The servants' quarters offered another clue. A young footman, nervous under Poirot's scrutiny, recounted his sighting of a shadow near the east wing at 11 p.m. "Tall, sir, in a cloak, moved quick toward the gardens." Poirot pressed. "A man? A woman?" The footman faltered. "Couldn't say, sir. Too dark." The shadow, Poirot noted, aligned with no one's alibi perfectly. Charles was at the pub, Reginald in the billiard room, Victoria and Eleanor in their rooms. A red herring or a glimpse of the killer? Back in the library, Poirot spread out his findings. The ledger, the letter, the handkerchief, the misaligned vial label. "Clues," he said, but also distractions. The crimson thread, too convenient, pointing to Lady Beatrice. The shadow, too vague. The handkerchief, too obvious. Hastings groaned. "You're saying they're all false?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Not all, mon ami. One truth hides among the lies." Dinner that evening was a tense affair, the dining hall's grandeur dimmed by suspicion. The chandelier's light flickered, casting long shadows across the table. Lady Beatrice, her composure fraying, dropped her fork with a clatter, drawing gasps. "Forgive me," she whispered, her hand trembling. Reginald, his eyes shadowed, pushed away his plate untouched. Victoria and Charles exchanged hushed words, their hands entwined beneath the table. Eleanor, silent, adjusted her spectacles, her gaze darting to Jenkins as he served. The butler moved with his usual precision, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the wine decanter. Poirot, seated opposite Inspector Grange, observed every gesture. "The family," he whispered to Hastings, "they are like a chessboard. Each piece moves, but the strategy is hidden." Grange, overhearing, grumbled, "I've half a mind to arrest the lot and sort it later. That vial's suspicious." Poirot shook his head. "Patience, Inspector. The vial is a shadow, not the light." After dinner, Poirot requested a private word with the footman again. In the dim corridor, the young man fidgeted. "There's more, sir," he admitted. "I found something this morning near the east wing door in the shrubbery." He produced a small silver cigarette case monogrammed with an RH. "Master Reginald's," he said. "Lost it, he did, last night, maybe." Poirot turned it over, noting a faint scratch on the lid. "Or placed, perhaps," he mused. "A red herring planted to incriminate Reginald? Or proof of his presence near the crime scene?" Poirot returned to the colonel's room, now under police guard. He re-examined the fireplace, running his fingers along the stonework. No hidden panels, but a faint draft caught his attention. A crack in the mortar barely visible. "Interesting," he said, filing it away. The windows, still bolted, showed no tampering, but a faint smudge on the sill, grease perhaps, piqued his interest. "A trace," he told Hastings. "But of what?" As night fell, the estate groaned under a gathering storm, rain lashing the windows. Poirot sat by the library fire, sketching a timeline on a sheet of paper. "The colonel takes his tonic at 10:30, he said. "The shadow is seen at 11 aw. The house is locked at midnight. Death comes before dawn. The method, it is in the timing, Hastings." Hastings yawned. "You're chasing ghosts, Poirot. That cigarette case points to Reginald." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Or away from another. The little gray cells, they do not rest." The clues piled up. The crimson thread, the torn page in Eleanor's book, Reginald's cigarette case, the misaligned vial, the smudged sill. Each could lead to the killer, or nowhere. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. The locked room, it is not just a room, it is a mind. We must think as the murderer thinks. Hastings sighed. I'll leave that to you, old chap. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The storm that had threatened Crimson Court all day broke at dusk, its thunder rolling like cannon fire across the Kent hills. Rain lashed the manor's ancient walls, and the wind howled through the chimneys as if the estate itself mourned Colonel Harrington's death. Inside, the atmosphere was no less turbulent. Hercule Poirot, his small frame undaunted by the tempest, paced the library, his green eyes sharp as he sifted through the growing puzzle. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, sat by the fire, his brow furrowed. "Poirot," he said, "you've got a thread, a cigarette case, a smudge, yet we're no closer to the killer. This locked room's driving me mad." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "Patience, mon ami," he replied, his Belgian accent precise. "The crime, it is like a tapestry. Each thread seems random, but together they form the picture. We must find the pattern." The library's lamplight flickered, casting shadows that danced across the bookshelves, mirroring the shifting suspicions among the household. The investigation had reached a fever pitch, with Inspector Grange growing impatient. "I've half a mind to arrest young Reginald," he grumbled, waving the monogrammed cigarette case found in the shrubbery. "This puts him at the scene," Poirot raised a hand. "Non, Inspector. The case. It is too convenient, a lure to distract us. The true method lies elsewhere." Grange muttered but relented, trusting Poirot's reputation. Poirot began the evening by revisiting the suspects, summoning them one by one to the morning room, a smaller, cozier space with floral wallpaper and a ticking mantel clock. Lady Beatrice entered first, her elegance strained, her eyes shadowed. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low, "I've told you all I know. I argued with Reginald, my husband, not my son, about his will. He was set on leaving everything to charity. But I was in my room by 11, as I said." Poirot noted a faint tremor in her hand as she adjusted her pearl brooch. "Madame," he asked, "this crimson thread we found. Your dressing gown, it matches, non?" She paled. "Many gowns are crimson. I haven't worn mine in weeks." Her denial was firm, but her gaze flickered to the door. Reginald Jr. followed, his charm replaced by defiance. "That cigarette case? Planted, I tell you. I was in the billiard room till midnight, then bed. Father's debts lecture was nothing new. I didn't kill him for it." Poirot leaned forward. "Your cufflink, monsieur. Still missing. And now your cigarette case near the east wing. Coincidence?" Reginald's jaw tightened. "Someone's framing me. I'd bet on Charles. He's got lawyer's tricks up his sleeve." His alibi held, but the footman's hesitation lingered in Poirot's mind. Victoria, her eyes red from crying, clutched a shawl. "Papa's death, it's torn me apart. He forbade my marriage to Charles, yes, but I was knitting, as Eleanor said. I never left my room after 10. Eleanor beside her nodded meekly. "I heard her needles, sir, till past midnight." Poirot's gaze fell on Eleanor's novel, its torn page now tucked away. "Mademoiselle, this book, its missing page, what was it?" Eleanor flushed. "A recipe, sir, for a story I'm writing, nothing more." Poirot's silence was piercing, and Eleanor shifted uncomfortably. Charles Wentworth, polished as ever, adjusted his tie. "My alibi's airtight, Poirot. Pub till 11:30, receipt to prove it. Uncle's refusal to pay my $2,000 stung, but murder, absurd." Poirot examined the receipt again, its ink pristine. "Monsieur, your investments with the Colonel. They were for armaments, yes? A dangerous trade." Charles' smile was tight. Profitable, not dangerous. I'm no killer. Yet his fingers tapped a restless rhythm, betraying nerves. Jenkins, the butler, stood ramrod straight. The house was locked, sir. No one entered the east wing after I checked at midnight. The tonic was clean, I'd swear it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the icebox, Jenkins. You use it daily. Could someone tamper with it? Jenkins blinked, a rare crack in his composure. It's possible, sir, but I saw nothing amiss. The interviews yielded no confessions, but complications arose like weeds. A maid, trembling, reported seeing Lady Beatrice near the east wing at 11:15 p.m., contradicting her alibi. She was in her crimson gown, sir, hurrying away. Lady Beatrice recalled, gasped. Nonsense, I was abed. The crimson thread, once a subtle clue, now pointed sharply at her. Or was it misdirection? A twist came from the gardens. A groundskeeper raking leaves found a small glass vial buried under a rose bush, its label scraped off but faintly smelling of digitalis. Grange seized it. The murder weapon, he declared. Poirot examined it, his expression skeptical. Too obvious, Inspector. A killer so clever leaves no such trace. The vial's burial seemed staged, another red herring to cloud the truth. Then a shock, Victoria confessed, to a late-night argument with her father. I went to his room at 10 p.m., she admitted, tears streaming. I begged him to approve Charles. He shouted, sent me away. I didn't tell you before. I was ashamed. Her alibi, once solid, now wavered. Eleanor, questioned again, faltered. I may have dozed off. I can't be sure she stayed in her room. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Truth shifts, mademoiselle. Why? The storm outside intensified, lightning illuminating a figure at the library window. A fleeting silhouette, cloaked, gone in an instant. Hastings gasped. The shadow again! Poirot rushed to the window, finding only rain-slicked glass. A ghost? Hastings whispered. Poirot scoffed. No, a person, playing tricks. The shadow, like the cigarette case, felt planted, designed to mislead. Poirot returned to the colonel's room, braving the storm's chill to inspect the windowsill smudge. Under a magnifying glass, it revealed a trace of wax, not grease. Candle wax, perhaps, from a nighttime intruder. The fireplace draft, too, nagged at him. He tapped the stonework again, hearing a hollow echo. A passage? Hastings asked. Poirot shook his head. Not yet, but something is there. The evening brought another twist, a torn scrap of paper in the study hidden under a rug. It bore a single word in Eleanor's neat hand. Revenge. Poirot confronted her. Mademoiselle, your brother's dismissal. This word suggests a motive. Eleanor's spectacles slipped. It's from my novel, sir. A character's note, not mine. Her voice cracked, and Poirot let her go, unconvinced. Grange, frustrated, pushed for Jenkins's arrest, citing the vial and his access to the icebox. Poirot intervened. Too simple, Inspector. The killer weaves a web, not a noose. He gathered the suspects in the drawing room, his voice calm but commanding. One of you lies. The thread, the vial, the shadow. They are threads in a larger design. The poison was in the glass, slow-acting, timed for dawn. But how? That is the question. As thunder rumbled, Poirot's mind raced. The wax, the hollow stone, Victoria's confession. Each added complexity. The killer was close, their masks slipping. The little gray cells, he murmured to Hastings. They sense the truth. But it is not yet clear. Chapter 6. The revelation. The storm that had battered Crimson Court through the night had softened to a drizzle by the third morning, leaving the manor's grounds sodden and the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. Inside, the tension was palpable, each creak of the floorboards amplifying the household's unease. Hercule Poirot, his small frame impeccable in a tailored suit, stood in the library, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied a floor plan of the East Wing. The locked room where Colonel Harrington met his end remained a riddle, a vault sealed tighter than a banker's safe, yet breached by a killer's cunning. Captain Hastings, bleary-eyed from sleepless theorizing, slumped in an armchair. "Poirot," he said, "we've got threads, vials, shadows, and notes, but no answers. This case is a labyrinth." Poirot's green eyes sparkled with purpose. "Mon ami," he replied, his Belgian accent sharp. "A labyrinth has an exit if one follows the threads. Today we find a truth that changes all." His confidence was unshaken, though the household's fraying nerves tested even his composure. Inspector Grange, stationed at the manor with his constable, was growing restless. "I'm leaning toward young Reginald," he said, tapping the silver cigarette case found in the garden. "Or maybe the butler. Jenkins had access to that icebox." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Non-inspector, the obvious is a trap. The killer weaves a subtler web." He dismissed Grange's protests with a wave, his focus on a new lead that had emerged at dawn. The revelation came from an unexpected source, the manor's elderly cook, Mrs. Pemberton, who approached Poirot in the servants' hall, her apron dusted with flour. "Begging your pardon, sir," she said, her voice quavering, "but I found something odd in the kitchen this morning." She produced a small, tarnished brass key, its teeth worn but distinct. "It was in the icebox, sir, tucked behind the trays. Never seen it before." Poirot's eyes widened as he took the key, its weight heavy with possibility. "Madame, this is most significant. When did you last clean the icebox?" She hesitated. "2 days ago, sir, before the Colonel's passing." The key then was placed after the murder, a clue to the locked room's secret. Poirot hurried to the Colonel's bedroom, Hastings and Grange in tow. The room remained as it was, door locked from within, key still in the lock, windows bolted, fireplace cold. Poirot tested the brass key in the door's lock. It fit perfectly, a duplicate. "Mon Dieu!" he exclaimed. A second key, hidden in the icebox, used to enter and exit without disturbing the original. Hastings gasped. So the killer locked the door from outside, then slipped the first key back inside. How? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "That, mon ami, is the next question." The discovery shifted the investigation's tide. Poirot summoned the household to the drawing room, where the fire crackled under a portrait of the Colonel in his military prime. Lady Beatrice, her face drawn, clutched her shawl. "A second key?" she whispered. "But who could have made it?" Reginald Jr., pacing, snapped, "This proves I'm being framed. That cigarette case, now this key. Someone's out to get me." Victoria, clinging to Charles Wentworth, sobbed, "It's monstrous. Papa trusted everyone here." Charles, his lawyer's calm fraying, adjusted his spectacles. "This key could belong to anyone. The servants have access to the kitchen." Eleanor Blackwood, silent, twisted her handkerchief, her spectacles glinting. Jenkins stood by the door, his gaunt face unreadable. Poirot held up the key, its brass catching the firelight. "This," he said, "is no ordinary clue. It unlocks the room, yes, but also the mind of the killer. Who had the means to copy a key? Who knew the icebox would hide it?" The room fell silent, each suspect avoiding his gaze. A twist deepened the mystery. The groundskeeper, summoned to report on the buried vial, revealed a new detail. "Sir, I found tracks in the mud near the rose bush. Small boots like a lady's leading to the east wing. The vial, tested by Grange's chemist, contained digitalis, but its burial seemed staged, its glass too clean for garden dirt." Poirot's brow furrowed. A woman's boots, yet the shadow was tall. Contradictions multiply. Suspicion shifted toward Eleanor, whose nervous demeanor grew pronounced. Poirot confronted her in the morning room, holding up the torn scrap with revenge scrawled upon it. Mademoiselle, your brother's dismissal. This note. Speak plainly. Eleanor's voice trembled. It's fiction, sir. A story I'm writing, nothing more. My brother, he's long gone, no grudge remains. Yet her hands shook, and a page in her novel glimpsed by Poirot described a poison recipe in chilling detail. Fiction mirrors truth, perhaps, Poirot said, letting her go but noting her fear. Victoria's confession from the previous day took a new turn. She admitted slipping out at 11:15 p.m. not to argue with her father but to meet Charles in the garden. We planned to elope, she whispered. Papa would never allow it. Charles, questioned separately, confirmed. We met briefly under the oaks. No one saw us. But the footman, overhearing, contradicted. I saw Miss Victoria near the east wing, not the oaks, at 11:15. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A lie or a mistake? Another complication arose. Lady Beatrice, pale and faint, complained of nausea, symptoms mirroring digitalis poisoning. The house doctor, summoned, confirmed mild poisoning but no lethal dose. Someone tampered with her tea, he said. Poirot examined her teacup, finding a faint residue. A warning, he mused, or a mistake by the killer? Grange, alarmed, posted a guard at her door. The storm's aftermath revealed another clue. In the attic, among dusty trunks, Poirot found a hidden ledger. Colonel Harrington's private accounts detailing payments to a shadowy figure labeled T.B. Thomas Blackwood, Eleanor's brother. The sums, $500 over 2 years, suggested blackmail, not reinstatement. The colonel paid to silence him, Poirot said. But why? The ledger, dated up to the week of the murder, hinted at a deeper motive for Eleanor, or someone using her brother's name. Poirot gathered the suspects again, his voice calm but commanding. The key unlocks the room but not the method. The poison, digitalis slow-acting, was in the glass, not the tonic. The icebox hides more than ice, perhaps. And this T.B., who is he to the colonel? Reginald lunged forward. You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. I'm no blackmailer. Charles's eyes narrowed and Victoria clutched his arm. Eleanor's spectacles slipped, her face ashen. As night fell, Poirot sat by the library fire, sketching a new timeline. The tonic at 10:30, the shadow at 11, see Victoria's meeting at 11:15, the house locked at midnight. The key, the wax, the ledger, they point to a mind both cunning and desperate. Hastings yawned. You're close, Poirot, I can feel it, but who? Poirot's smile was faint. The little gray cells, they see the shape, but not yet the face. Chapter 7. Justice served. The fourth morning at Crimson Court dawned clear, the storm's fury spent, leaving the manor's lawns glittering with dew. Inside, the household was a cauldron of tension, each member awaiting Poirot's verdict with bated breath. The library, now a familiar stage, was bathed in soft sunlight, its shelves standing sentinel as Hercule Poirot prepared to unveil the truth. His small frame commanded the room, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache perfectly waxed. Captain Hastings, seated by the fire, clutched a notebook, his face a mix of anticipation and exhaustion. Poirot, he said, you've kept us guessing long enough. Who did it? And how? Poirot's green eyes twinkled. Mon ami, he replied, his Belgian accent crisp. The little gray cells have worked tirelessly, and now the puzzle is complete. The murderer of Colonel Harrington is here among us. He turned to Inspector Grange, who stood by the door, his notebook ready. Inspector, gather the household. The truth will be revealed. The drawing room filled with the suspects. Lady Beatrice, her elegance brittle, her pearls clutched tightly. Reginald Harrington, Jr., his charm replaced by a haggard scowl. Victoria, her eyes red but defiant, clinging to Charles Wentworth's arm. Charles, his lawyer's poise strained, his spectacles glinting. Miss Eleanor Blackwood, her mousy demeanor taut, her hands folded tightly. Jenkins, the butler, standing rigid, his gaunt face a mask. The air was thick with anticipation, the fire's crackle the only sound. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Colonel Harrington was a crime of ingenuity. A locked room, a poison with no trace, a web of lies. But the little gray cells, they see through the shadows. The killer is Mademoiselle Eleanor Blackwood. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Eleanor's spectacles slipped, her face ashen. "No!" she cried, her voice breaking. "It's not true!" Reginald lunged forward, but Grange restrained him. Victoria sobbed, and Lady Beatrice clutched her chair. Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Permit me to explain, step by step, how this impossible crime was committed." He began with the motive. Mademoiselle Eleanor, your brother, Thomas Blackwood, was dismissed by the colonel for a theft he did not commit. The ledger we found, payments to T.B. were not blackmail but compensation, yes? Yet the colonel's refusal to clear his name drove you to revenge. You posed as Victoria's companion to enter Crimson Court, biding your time. Eleanor's eyes darted, but she said nothing. Poirot turned to the method. The poison digitalis was administered in the colonel's glass, slow-acting to ensure death by dawn. But how, in a locked room? The answer lies in a device both simple and ingenious. The gramophone in the colonel's study adjacent to his bedroom. He paused, letting the revelation sink in. You, mademoiselle, scratched a thin layer of digitalis powder into the grooves of a gramophone record, a favorite of the colonel's played nightly at 10:45. The needle coated with the poison was wiped clean after each use, but you rigged a small wire hidden in the gramophone's arm to transfer the powder to a cloth. This cloth, dipped in the colonel's water glass, dissolved the poison undetected. By morning, the cloth was removed, leaving no trace. Hastings blinked. "Good Lord, Poirot, a gramophone? That's devilish." Poirot nodded. "Oui, mon ami." The room was locked, the key inside, but the study shares a wall. A concealed panel behind the fireplace where I found the draft allowed access. You entered at 10:45, placed the cloth, and exited, sealing the panel. The duplicate key hidden in the icebox was a backup, never used. Poirot addressed the red herrings. The crimson thread, stolen from Lady Beatrice's gown, was placed to mislead. The cigarette case, taken from Reginald's room, was planted in the garden. The buried vial, another distraction buried by you, mademoiselle, to suggest an outside killer. The shadow at 11:07, you in a borrowed cloak ensuring the footman's notice. The note marked revenge, not fiction, but your heart's truth. Eleanor's composure cracked, tears streaming. "He ruined my brother," she sobbed. "Thomas died in disgrace, penniless, because of him. I had to make it right." Her confession spilled like the rain outside, raw and unyielding. Grange stepped forward, his handcuffs ready. "Miss Blackwood, you're under arrest." Poirot held up a hand. "One moment, Inspector." The wax smudge on the windowsill. It was from your candle, mademoiselle, used to light the panel's entrance. The torn page in your book detailing poison, your plan, not a novel. And Lady Beatrice's poisoning, a mistake, yes? You meant to warn, not kill, with a trace in her tea. Eleanor nodded, defeated. I never meant to hurt her." The household reeled. Lady Beatrice wept softly, her relief palpable. Reginald muttered, "I knew I wasn't mad." Victoria embraced Charles, her sobs easing. Jenkins bowed his head, his silence heavy with guilt for missing the signs. Poirot turned to them all. The crime was clever, but no one escapes the little gray cells. Justice is served, but it is a heavy price. As Eleanor was led away, Poirot addressed the family. "The colonel's will, it stands. Charities inherit, but your hearts must heal. Madame Beatrice, your strength will guide. Mademoiselle Victoria, marry your Charles with no fear. Monsieur Reginald, your debts are a lesson, not a chain. His words were kind but firm, a balm to their wounds. Outside, the sun broke through, casting light on Crimson Court's towers. Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, their motor car waiting. Another triumph, Poirot, Hastings said, tipping his hat. Poirot's smile was faint. Not triumph, mon ami. Order restored. The world turns, and the little gray cells rest. For now. Chapter 8. The Unraveling Threads. The fifth morning at Crimson Court broke with a fragile calm, the sun casting long shadows across the dew-kissed lawns. The storm's fury had passed, but its memory lingered in the manor's sodden grounds and the household's weary hearts. Eleanor Blackwood, now in the custody of Inspector Grange, had been taken to Ashford's police station, her quiet sobs echoing as she was led away. Yet the resolution of Colonel Harrington's murder left Crimson Court not with peace, but with a restless unease, as if the walls themselves mourned the betrayal within. Hercule Poirot, his small frame as precise as ever, stood in the library, his green eyes scanning the shelves as if they held one final secret. Captain Hastings, sipping coffee by the fire, shook his head. "Poirot," he said, "you've done it again. Cracked an impossible case, but the family, they're shattered. Is it truly over?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind still at work. "Mon ami," he replied, his Belgian accent sharp. "Justice is served, but the heart takes longer to heal. There are threads yet to tie." The household gathered in the drawing room, their faces a gallery of grief and relief. Lady Beatrice, her elegance restored but her eyes shadowed, sat by the window, her pearls glinting in the morning light. "Monsieur Poirot," she said softly, "you've saved us from ruin, but at what cost?" Eleanor was family in her way. Reginald Harrington, Jr., his usual bravado subdued, leaned against the mantel, his hands in his pockets. "I thought it was me they'd pin it on," he muttered. "That cigarette case, the cufflink, clever, wasn't she?" Victoria, her beauty softened by sorrow, sat beside Charles Wentworth, their hands entwined. "I trusted her," Victoria whispered. "How could she hide such hatred?" Charles, his lawyer's poise returning, nodded. "A mastermind in her quiet way, but it's done now." Jenkins, the butler, served tea with his usual precision, though his gaunt face betrayed a flicker of guilt for missing Eleanor's deception. Poirot, standing before the fire, addressed them. "Mesdames et messieurs, the crime is solved, but its echoes remain. Mademoiselle Eleanor's motive, revenge for her brother's disgrace, was a fire that consumed her. Yet there are questions unanswered, details that nag the little gray cells." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Why, for instance, did the colonel pay Thomas Blackwood? And what of the wax smudge on the windowsill, its purpose fully explained? A new revelation emerged, prompted by a discovery in the attic. A maid, cleaning out Eleanor's sparse belongings, found a hidden diary tucked inside a hollowed-out book, a medical text, its pages worn. Poirot, summoned to examine it, read aloud a chilling entry. October 10th, 1925. The plan is set. The gramophone will sing his death. Thomas's honor demands it. The diary confirmed Eleanor's scheme, detailing how she stole digitalis from the manor's medicine chest, ground it to powder, and scratched it into the record's grooves. But another entry hinted at a deeper secret. The colonel knew of TB's innocence, but hid it to protect his own shame. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The colonel framed Thomas Blackwood, not for theft, but to cover a greater sin. This sparked a minor subplot, the colonel's past. Poirot, with Grange's permission, interviewed the groundskeeper, an old soldier who had served under the colonel in India. "He was a hard man, sir," the groundskeeper said, his voice low. In '98, there was a scandal, missing regimental funds. The colonel blamed a junior officer, but whispers said he took the money himself. Thomas Blackwood, his butler, later knew something. Overheard a confession, maybe. Poirot nodded. So the payments to TB were hush money, not charity. Eleanor discovered this, and it fueled her vengeance. The family, gathered again, reacted with shock. Lady Beatrice clutched her shawl. Reginald? Dishonest? Impossible! Yet her voice wavered, as if she recalled his secretive ledgers. Reginald Jr. swore. Father, a thief? That's rot. Victoria, tearful, whispered, It explains Eleanor's hatred. She thought Papa destroyed her brother. Charles, ever pragmatic, adjusted his spectacles. If true, it's no excuse for murder, but it complicates the will. Charities might not see a penny if this gets out. Poirot turned to Jenkins, whose silence had grown heavier. Monsieur Jenkins, you served the colonel for decades. Did you know of this scandal? The butler's hands trembled, spilling a drop of tea. I heard rumors, sir, in India, but I kept his confidence. I failed to see Miss Eleanor's plan. His admission, though minor, lifted a weight, and Poirot nodded kindly. Loyalty blinds, but you are not to blame. Another thread unraveled, the wax smudge on the windowsill. Poirot, revisiting the colonel's room, tested the window's bolts with a small tool. The smudge, he deduced, was not from Eleanor's candle, but from a wax seal, used to secure a string that pulled the fireplace panel shut from outside, ensuring no trace of her entry. Clever, Poirot said to Hastings. She sealed the panel's mechanism, leaving only the smudge as error. This explained the draft he'd felt, a subtle clue now fully resolved. The household's dynamics shifted in the aftermath. Reginald Jr., cleared of suspicion, vowed to settle his debts, his bravado tempered by gratitude. I owe you, Poirot, he said, offering a rare handshake. Victoria and Charles, their marriage no longer forbidden, planned a quiet wedding, their love a light in the manor's gloom. Lady Beatrice, though shaken by her husband's past, resolved to honor his will, ensuring the charities received their due. It's what he wanted, she said, her voice firm. I'll see it done. Poirot, however, uncovered one final twist, a letter in Eleanor's diary addressed to Victoria but never sent. Dear Miss Victoria, forgive me. Your kindness deserved better. I acted for Thomas, not against you. Poirot shared it privately with Victoria, who wept. She was my friend, she said. I wish I'd known her pain. Poirot's gaze softened. Mademoiselle, her crime was hers alone, but your heart is pure. As evening fell, Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, their motor car packed. Inspector Grange, shaking Poirot's hand, admitted, You've a knack, sir. That gramophone trick, I'd never have guessed. Poirot smiled faintly. The little gray cells, Inspector. They see what the eyes miss. Hastings, climbing into the car, chuckled. You've outdone yourself, Poirot. But I'm ready for a quiet weekend after this. The manor's towers loomed against the twilight, their shadows softer now, as if cleansed by truth. Crimson Court would heal, its secrets laid bare. Poirot, gazing back, murmured, Order is restored, mon ami, but the human heart, it writes its own mysteries. Chapter 9. Shadows of Truth. The sixth morning at Crimson Court dawned with a fragile serenity, the Kent countryside bathed in a golden haze that softened the manor's stern towers. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves and the promise of renewal. Inside, however, the household moved with the weight of recent truths. Eleanor Blackwood's arrest had lifted the veil on Colonel Harrington's murder, but the revelation of his past, a scandal of stolen regimental funds in India, cast long shadows over his legacy. Hercule Poirot, his small frame as precise as a pocket watch, stood in the library, his green eyes reflective as he gazed out at the gardens. Captain Hastings, polishing his spectacles, broke the silence. "Poirot," he said, "you've solved the crime, but the family's still a mess. That scandal, will it ruin them?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind still turning. "Mon ami," he replied, his Belgian accent crisp. "The crime is solved, but the heart of Crimson Court bleeds still. We must mend what we can before we depart." His words carried a quiet resolve, as if the little gray cells sought not just justice but harmony. The household gathered in the morning room, its floral wallpaper a stark contrast to their somber mood. Lady Beatrice, her elegance tempered by grief, sat by a window, her hands folded over a letter from the Colonel's solicitor. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but soft, "the will stands. Charities will inherit as Reginald wished. But this scandal, it could taint his name forever." Her eyes, shadowed by sleepless nights, held a plea for guidance. Reginald Harrington Jr., his usual swagger subdued, leaned against a table, his hands fidgeting. "Father a thief? I still can't believe it. I thought I was the family disgrace." His tone was bitter, but a flicker of relief softened his features. He was free of suspicion thanks to Poirot. Victoria, her chestnut hair pinned neatly, sat beside Charles Wentworth, their engagement now unshackled by the Colonel's disapproval. "Papa's past hurts," she said, "but Eleanor's betrayal cuts deeper. She was my friend." Charles, his lawyer's mind already at work, nodded. "We'll keep the scandal quiet for the family's sake. The charities needn't know." Jenkins, serving coffee with his usual precision, remained silent, his gaunt face etched with regret for his blindness to Eleanor's scheme. Poirot addressed them, his voice calm but authoritative. "Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Colonel Harrington was a tragedy born of secrets, but secrets need not destroy you. The Colonel's shame, it is a shadow, not the man. You must choose how to carry his legacy." His words hung in the air, a challenge to move forward. A new revelation emerged, deepening the Colonel's scandal. Poirot, with Inspector Grange's approval, had requested records from the War Office, delivered that morning by a courier. The documents confirmed the groundskeeper's tale. In 1898, $10,000 in regimental funds vanished from the Colonel's command in Punjab. A junior officer was blamed, but evidence pointed to Harrington himself, who covered his tracks with ruthless efficiency. Thomas Blackwood, then a young aide, had overheard a conversation implicating the Colonel and was silenced with a false theft charge years later when he served as butler. The payments to TB in the ledger, totaling $500, were hush money to keep him quiet. "Eleanor," Poirot said, "discovered this truth in her brother's letters, fueling her vengeance." Lady Beatrice gasped, her hand to her throat. "I knew Reginald was strict, but this—" "He hid so much," her voice cracked, revealing a marriage strained by unspoken truths. Poirot's gaze softened. "Madam, he sought to protect you, but his silence wounded others." The revelation shifted the family's perception, casting the Colonel not as a villain but as a flawed man, his pride, his downfall. A minor subplot unfolded, adding depth to the aftermath. Victoria, sorting through her father's study, found a locked box hidden behind a false panel in the desk. Inside was a locket with a photograph of a young Indian woman, inscribed to R.H. with love, 1897. "Who was she?" Victoria asked Poirot, her voice trembling. Poirot examined the locket, its silver worn but intricate. A memory, perhaps, from his time in India. A love he could not keep, tied to his shame. The groundskeeper, questioned again, recalled rumors of a romance forbidden by military rank, possibly linked to the stolen funds. "The Colonel sent her away," he said. "Broke his heart," they said. This discovery humanized the Colonel, softening Victoria's grief. "He wasn't just a tyrant," she said, clutching the locket. "He loved and lost. Charles, practical as ever, suggested donating the locket to a museum, preserving the colonel's memory discreetly. Reginald Jr. surprisingly agreed. Let's not bury him in scandal. He was my father, flaws and all. Jenkins, breaking his silence, offered a confession of his own. Sir, he said to Poirot, I knew of the payments to Blackwood. The colonel confided in me years ago. I swore secrecy, but I failed to see Miss Eleanor's pain. His voice wavered, and Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder. Monsieur, your loyalty was your duty, but the truth frees you now. Jenkins nodded, his posture easing for the first time in days. Poirot turned to the practical matters. The colonel's will, as Lady Beatrice confirmed, would proceed with 50,000 to war widows and orphanages. The scandal, Poirot advised, could be contained by discreet handling. Charles, with his legal acumen, agreed to draft a statement framing the colonel's payments as charitable, not blackmail. The truth need not be a weapon, Poirot said. Let it heal, not harm. A final thread unraveled, a letter from Eleanor delivered to the manor from the police station. Addressed to the family, it read, I acted for Thomas, but I regret the pain I caused you. Forgive me if you can. Victoria wept, her anger tempered by pity. She was broken by loss, she said. I wish we could have helped her. Poirot nodded. Her crime was hers, but her heart was not all darkness. As the day waned, Poirot and Hastings walked the gardens, the manor's towers glowing in the sunset. You've done more than solve a murder, Poirot, Hastings said. You've given them a path forward. Poirot's smile was faint. The little gray cells, they solve the crime, but the heart mends the soul. Crimson Court will stand, mon ami. The family, though scarred, began to mend. Lady Beatrice planned a memorial for the colonel, emphasizing his service, not his shame. Reginald vowed to reform, his debts a spur to change. Victoria and Charles, their future bright, set a wedding date. Jenkins, relieved of his burden, served with renewed purpose. The manor, once a vault of secrets, breathed easier, its shadows lighter. Chapter 10. Farewell to Crimson Court. The 7th morning at Crimson Court dawned with a quiet radiance, the Kent countryside glowing under a sky of unbroken blue. The manor's towers, once stern sentinels, seemed softened by the sunlight, their ivy-clad stones whispering of resilience rather than secrets. The air carried the scent of fresh grass and blooming late roses, a promise that life endured despite the tragedy that had shaken the estate. Inside, the household moved with a tentative hope, their wounds still raw but beginning to heal under the weight of truth. Hercule Poirot, his small frame impeccable in a tailored suit, stood on the gravel drive, his patent leather shoes gleaming as he prepared to depart. Beside him, Captain Hastings adjusted his tweed cap, his face a mix of relief and melancholy. Poirot, he said, you've turned this place upside down and righted it again. The family owes you more than they can say. Poirot's green eyes twinkled, his mustache curving slightly. Mon ami, he replied, his Belgian accent crisp. The little gray cells restore order, but the heart, it is the family who must rebuild. Crimson Court will stand. The household gathered in the grand hall to bid Poirot farewell, their faces a tapestry of gratitude and resolve. Lady Beatrice Harrington, her elegance restored, stood at the center, her silver blonde hair catching the light from the chandelier. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady, you've given us truth, painful though it was. Reginald's legacy, his charity, not his shame, will endure. In her hand she held a small velvet box which she offered to Poirot. A token from us all. Inside was a silver pen engraved with CH, a nod to his clarity. Poirot bowed, touched. Madame, I am honored. May your strength guide Crimson Court. Reginald Harrington Jr., his usual bravado replaced by a quiet determination, stepped forward. "I've been a fool, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "Debts, gambling, I thought that was my story. But you've shown me I can write a new one." He extended a hand, his grip firm. "I'm selling my horses, settling what I owe. No more running." Poirot nodded, his gaze approving. "Monsieur, the first step is the hardest. You have taken it." Victoria Harrington, her beauty softened by a newfound maturity, stood beside Charles Wentworth, their engagement now a beacon of hope. "Papa's gone," she said, her eyes glistening, "but you've given us a way forward, Monsieur Poirot. Charles and I will marry in spring here at Crimson Court." Charles, his lawyer's poise tempered by warmth, added, "We'll honor Uncle's will, every penny, to the charities. The scandal stays buried." Poirot smiled faintly. "Mademoiselle, Monsieur, love is the greatest legacy. Guard it well." Jenkins, the butler, stood at the edge, his gaunt frame less rigid than before. "Sir," he said to Poirot, "I failed the colonel, missing Miss Eleanor's deceit, but I'll serve this family with clearer eyes now." Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder. "Monsieur Jenkins, loyalty is your strength. Use it wisely." Jenkins bowed, a weight lifted from his shoulders. A final reflection came from a letter delivered that morning from Eleanor Blackwood, now awaiting trial in Ashford. Written in her neat hand, it read, "To the Harringtons, my actions were unforgivable, but know I mourn the pain I caused. Thomas's memory drove me to darkness, but your kindness haunts me. May you find peace." Lady Beatrice read it aloud, her voice trembling. "She was lost," she said, "but I'll pray for her." Victoria, clutching the locket from her father's past, nodded. "We'll forgive in time." Poirot, ever observant, had one last task. He requested a private moment in the colonel's study where the gramophone still stood, its polished wood a silent witness to the crime. He examined it once more, ensuring no detail was missed. The hidden panel behind the fireplace, now sealed by Grange's men, was a testament to Eleanor's cunning. "A mind so sharp," Poirot murmured, "yet twisted by pain." He found a small photograph tucked behind the gramophone, a faded image of Thomas Blackwood, young and proud in his butler's uniform. "Your honor is restored," Poirot said softly, slipping it into an envelope for Eleanor's trial, a gesture of closure. The family's healing took tangible form. Lady Beatrice announced a memorial service for the colonel to be held in the village church, celebrating his military service and charitable intent. "His flaws don't erase his good," she said, her resolve firm. Reginald, inspired, offered to fund a scholarship in his father's name, aiding veterans' children. "It's what he'd want," he said, his voice steady. Victoria and Charles planned to restore the manor's gardens, a symbol of renewal. "Papa loved the roses," Victoria said, smiling through tears. As Poirot and Hastings walked to their motor car, the household lined the drive, their farewells heartfelt. The maids curtsied, the footman bowed, and the groundskeeper tipped his cap. "You've changed us, sir," he said. Poirot, climbing into the car, replied, "No, you have changed yourselves. The little gray cells merely light the way." The Daimler rolled down the drive, Crimson Court's towers fading in the rearview mirror. Hastings, settling into his seat, chuckled. "Another case closed, Poirot. What's next? A quiet holiday?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Quiet, mon ami? Never. The world is full of puzzles, and the little gray cells, they hunger." The car sped toward London, leaving the manor to its new dawn. Crimson Court stood proud, its secrets laid bare, its heart mending. The colonel's shadow, once heavy, now mingled with the light of forgiveness. Lady Beatrice, Reginald, Victoria, Charles, and Jenkins faced the future, their bonds strengthened by truth. The manor, no longer a vault of lies, breathed freely, its story complete.